Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the beautiful circuit of Watkins Glen, and welcome to the ERA Sunday Championship here in America. We are going bowling at Watkins Glen, a beautiful circuit that is going to test our drivers, going and pushing the boundaries of what they can do. This is round 5, our 7 rounds in the championship, and it's going to be a delightful one to take a look at. Keep an eye out for the inner loop. That is going to be the crucial moments to go and get past. Now, if we go back to Watkins Glen last season, landed up side-by-side battles right through the entirety of the circuit. No one could break out of the slipstreams. So, let's take a look at our points and see where everyone's standing. And first up is our golds. First place is Hanso Foss sitting on 48 points. 8 points ahead of Federico Calgero. Richard Oakes sits in third. Jim Emilson is tied with that third place, and now this is where it gets interesting. Aaron Schigel is 37 points, 1 point off third place, so it's going to be a fight between Richard, Jim, and Aaron. El Perry sits on 24 points, only 3 points ahead of Marseille Sarcha on 21. Christoph Rolotsky sits with 20 points. Patrick Biles sits on 14, and the Bearded and Badass sits on 12 points. Looking over to our platinum, it is Carl Sainz that sits with 52 points. Milestone on 43. David Brodsky sits with 40. Lucas Collab is on 38 points. 4 points ahead of Simon Cosette. Scott Reynolds on 34 points and fighting for that 5th place. Ray Williams sits on 25. Chris Wall on 24. Lewis Knight sits on 18. And Martin Spritzer sits on 14. Let's take a look at our diamonds, because a little bit of a change has been happening. Everyone's been getting faster. They've been trying to improve. And Christoph Peterson, the defending champion, now on the back foot. Ben Hicks sits with 56 points and is 4 points ahead of Christoph Peterson in second place. Tomo Malmi sits with 38 points. He is tied with Ernest Lindberg, who have been battling on and off between one another. Ruben Heineke on 32 points. Jason Farmer on 26. Sean Skitter sits on 22. Nicholas Cora with 12. David Roth on 12. And Stephen Milano James sits with 10 points. So, this is going to be a wild one. It's going to be exciting. A massive welcome to every single one of the drivers and every single one of you out in the virtual grandstand. Tony Gamble saying, how's it, everyone? And how's it to Griffin Sim Racing Team? Huge support coming in for the Griffin Sim Racing Team. And this is going to be a very interesting run as our drivers make their way through. This is El Perry, though. He's trying to pick up the pace, same as Karl Heinz, however, looking to really claw their way through. Christoph Peterson leads out the top, but Ben Hicks is so far fastest in all sectors. Sector 1 and Sector 3 was his best on the previous lap. Has he put it together for Sector 2 to start on the podium yet again? And this is going to be a wild one. Runs out wide. Oh, into the wall, unfortunately. Ben Hicks going and losing a lot of time. Impact against the wall coming out of the final corner, but does tie in time with Christoph Peterson. Literally 142.5 separating both drivers as they made their way through. Christoph Peterson now needs to put the hammer down. Leading out our platinums is so far Scott Reynolds out in 4th place. He's got Karl Heinz on the back of him, and it's only 0.2 of a second difference between the two of them. A little bit further down, we do have Hanso Foss. He's trying to pick up the pace, leading out our golds. Needs to keep an eye on Aaron Schigel, who sits in 15th position as it stands. The driver's still trying to figure out what is going to be the best options. What are they going to need to do? As Christoph Peterson looking to have a good time coming across. This is going to be the quickest time here today. 142.5 becomes a 142.3. Christoph opens up the gap from himself and Ben Hicks. Ernest Lindberg's out on the circuit, lies in 3rd place. He's trying to keep the pace going. 0.3 of a second up on his time. Scott Reynolds, 0.1 up on his best time. Is it going to be enough to hold the top spot for Platinum? As they come out of the final corner across the line, Scott Reynolds up into 4th place, bumping down Sean Skitter. Karl Heinz waits in pit lane. Jason Farmer for the Griffin Sim Racing Team sits in 7th, trying to get a time on the board. That is going to be moving him up in the order. So far, Sam Kursat, along with Bearded Badass, Miles Stone, David Young, and Richard Oakes are yet to put a time on the board to be able to fight their way through the grid. Ryan Heineke sits with 0.1. So is David Brodsky at current, trying to pick up the pace. Chris Wall sits 0.7 up on his personal best. Federico Calgero, 0.5 as he comes up towards the line. Is it going to be enough to jump him into that top 20? Lies in 24th, comes across the line and jumps up into 19th. Great drive on his part. Bit of badass also trying to get the hammer down. He's 0.2 up on his personal best to try and make this work out a little bit more. Milestone still sits without time. Simon Cussett, David Young and Richard Oakes still needing to put a time on the board to make an impact here in qualifying with 3 minutes and 35 seconds. However, this is where drivers nearly need to go and start thinking about, hang on, I can't get a time out here. Maybe I haven't got enough time. Let's rather get into the pits, get ourselves ready for the race. Well, Aaron Schigel, who is fighting for that top 3, is going to fight a little bit harder. 15th place, he's 0.4 up on his time. He does come across the line and moves himself into 11th position, just out of Ruan Heineke's time, 143.557, where the 143.565 of Aaron as he came across the line. Ben Hicks still on the front row, but now needs to find a little bit more time. A 142.3 by Christoph Peterson has really taken a big impact to his times. He started in pole position quite a few times during the course of this season, and this would be one of the very few that he would be starting in second. He's trying to pick up the pace, really putting the hammer down out in that Lexus. Sector 1, he was up on the last lap, but Sector 2 and 3 fell off the cliff. Let's see how it's all going to work out. 0.032 separate first place. They did tie in times, and Ben Hicks, well, puts in a 142.280, only 0.1 quicker than Christoph Peterson. Sean Skitter trying to figure out what he can do. Sean Skitter down in 5th place. Andre Sorodio making his return to the ERA grid for the Project Vapor team and is doing a great job in doing so. Sits 0.1 on his personal best, Lyon in 14th position, and not considering a good return is going to be a lot of fun. I know he's been busy racing Le Mans Ultimate and playing with those hypercars, so it's good to see him returning to the circuit and ACC. Federico Calgero trying to pick up the pace, 0.1 up on his lap time. Patrick Biles also 0.1 up on his lap time. Bit of badass, 0.2 up on his, and Miles Stone is looking to really set the world ablaze. Now, he did set a time of a 2.6.5, but it didn't count due to an off track. He's hoping to make it work. He's 2.2 seconds quicker now. This is going to be a proper run for him as Miles Stone looking to move his way up through the order. Interesting enough, Simon Cussett and Richard Oakes will have to wait a little bit more as there's only 1 minute and 10 seconds left. Miles Stone puts time out on the board and moves himself up to a cool 6th position. A monster jump on his part to go and keep in with the fight. Andre Sorodia next up to come across the line. 0.2 up on his personal best. 15th position, trying to get into that top 10. Comes across the line. He moves up into 14th, just getting ahead of David Roth. Federico Calgero is the next driver to come across the line. 0.1 up on his personal best. He needs to carry the momentum through for the Samba Racing in the McLaren 720S. Comes right out of the final corner, close to the wall, brings the throttle down, and it's going to be a good time for him. Moving up into the top 20. Patrick Biles is going to be the next of our drivers to set a time on the board. He's currently 0.1 up on his personal best. Came out of the boot, trying to keep it all together through the toe, and continues on the drive. We got Crazy Stunts joining us out there in the virtual grandstands as well. Big welcome to everyone and a massive, massive welcome to round 5 of the ERA Sunday Championship. There is 7 rounds in this championship and it is incredibly close between them. Checker flag has come out to signal the end of our qualifying. So if you haven't put a time on the board just as yet, you got one chance to do it. Otherwise, you are game over and you're going to have to settle for what you've got. Miles Stone, however, looking to try and put the hammer down, is 0.1 up on his personal best. He wants to get into that top 5. He's literally sniffing it as the 143.1 is to beat by Sean Skitter. A 143.2 was Miles Stone. Is this going to be enough? 0.1 up on his time. Might bump him into the top 5 as he comes across the line. He does get ahead of Sean Skitter and will be starting out in the 3rd row. Sorodio next to come round, trying to put the time on the board. Fortunately, not going to count for him, as we do see Patrick Wallace also slowing up, unable to improve. So a couple of drivers are going to be waiting for their opportunity. Now, this is where it gets exciting, ladies and gentlemen, and a monster welcome to Watkins Glen, a circuit that is here to test the drivers every way possible. Now, one thing you got to talk about here at Watkins Glen, turn 1 is gonna be a daunting affair. You're going down the hill into a change of camber and undulation. So it's hard braking into second gear, then start accelerating up through the S's, which gets rather tight. Is slipstream all the way down till you get to the inner loop. You want to keep it nice and tight through the right-hander, bring it back to the left, just to straighten the corner out on your exit. This does get a little bit interesting because if you go a little too far, you land up in a world of hurt. So the drivers are going to have to keep that well enough in mind of how they're going to push themselves a little bit more. What is the tires going to be feeling by the end of this as well? Because there is big impacts that the drivers are going to have to contend with here at Watkins Glen. This will be an exciting run of note for many of the drivers. Watkins Glen highly anticipated, and everyone hoping to get some good score of points here after Monza and after all the rounds that we have gone through. Many of the drivers actually preferring Watkins Glen to the other racetracks as well. And that is where the fun times start, as this is going to be rather cold. So a warm-up lap is crucial to generate heat into those tires and rims to ensure that they stay at the top of the order. So as we're waiting for all the drivers to get ready to go and start getting onto the grid, we'll then go through our starting order. But at the moment, keep an eye. Ben Hicks, Christoph Peterson fighting out for that championship. It's going to be a long, long fight nonetheless. We'll be right back as we get ready to rock and roll for our run here at Watkins Glen. And we are back, ladies and gentlemen. This is going to be exciting. Now, if it's the first time you're joining us here at ERA, a massive welcome to you all. We're in for an absolute treat. But you will be noticing that we do have these penalties popping up. Why would you think we have penalties? Well, let me explain this to you because it's rather exciting. We have success penalties. If you win the race in the last race, you land up with a 15-second penalty. Second place gets 10 seconds. Third place gets 5. The aim of these penalties is to bring the grids a lot closer, trying a new dynamic to your pit stop strategies, because now you've got to cater for that success penalty that will slow you down. So you have to open up the gap. Means that you got to think outside the box, but at the same time, it does make life rather interesting depending on your positioning to your competitors. And this, in the case for Ben Hicks and Christoph Peterson, is actually the worst one. Erna Sundbergs and Skurt Reynolds do not have penalties, so doesn't Ben Hicks. Christoph Peterson sits with 15 seconds. He's going to have to navigate. Sean Skitter, a little bit further down in 6th place, has 10 seconds. And Ruben Heineke sits with 5 seconds after his first time out on the ERA podium. A little bit further, we do have the likes of Hanso Voss, who came first in the gold. He's got 15 seconds that he's going to have to serve to try and move his way up through the order. And during this course of an hour race, it's not an easy thing to do. 15 seconds also added to Al Perry for a number of accidents that happened. Simon Kussat as well landed up with 15 seconds. 5 seconds for Christoph Rolodsky. 10 seconds for likes of Aaron Schigel will have to be catered for as well. So many of the drivers are going to have to think a little bit more on how they're going to get these strategies to work. What do they need to do to push themselves a little bit further during the course of this race? And once again, it is ice cold out there. 17 degrees track temperature, 13 degrees air temperature. And the drivers are having to really try and warm up to keep themselves going. Let's take a look at our grid for the likes of the ERA Sunday Championship. And it's going to be Ben Hicks starting out in first place with Christoph Peterson in second. Erna Sundberg sits in third along with Skurt Reynolds. Miles Stone in 5th place. Sean Skitter in 6th. Cole Heinz and Jason Farmer in 7th and 8th. David Broschke and Stephen Milano James right out your top 10. Ruben Heineke in 11th position. He's going to be starting with Aaron Schigel next to him. David Schutten sits in 13th, followed by Andre Sorodio on his return to the ERA grid. David Roth down in 15th ahead of Chris Wall. Richard Van Eerde in 17th. Lucas Collab looking to fight his way through the order. Hanso Voss in 19th and Federico Caldero sits in your top 20. Lewis Knight in 21st, followed by David Young, Patrick Biles, along with Christoph Rolodsky, Ulrich de Jager, Bearded and Badass, Jim Emilson, Al Perry in 28th, Simon Kussat in 29th, and Richard Oakes starting from pit lane. So, as the drivers start making their way around the circuit, they will be cruising through the boot. Now, this is a crucial part of the circuit where you got to get your braking absolutely right. You will notice a couple of drivers are starting to utilize different methods to try and generate heat. Brake drag being one of them. And that goes and causes the brake disc to warm up, the heat to then go right into the rim and then into the carcass of the tire. Then you'll also will note drivers start to move left and right, creating a bit more friction, trying to work those tires in. You don't want to start doing it while everything's still cold. You want to generate heat passively, then start working your tires, because you're going to have to rely on that grip for however long you wish to stay out. And remember, this is an hour race with one mandatory pit stop that needs to be done. You can try go a full stint, but there's only 2 sets of tires that you have on a race weekend. And the drivers are going to have to think about that. They've used these tires out in qualifying. They'll have to make them work for the duration, first half of the race, and then pit, go for a second set of tires. Now, you can keep on a single set of tires, but the question is, how far is that going to help you? We've seen the drop-off on many of these cars as they're not able to do it. Another factor that comes in, Christoph Peterson is lining up next to Ben Hicks, both championship fighters, with Erna Sundberg sitting down in 4th place at current, fighting for 3rd place. This is going to be the weird one for the likes of Christoph Peterson, because now he's got a bit of backup behind him, but in the same as being his own rival that would be hunting him down. Skurt Reynolds and Miles Stone close up as well as we start making our way through into the left-hander. They will get a warning from our race director to say, listen, it is going to be A rolling start. It is 70 kilometers an hour. You are to hold 70 kilometers an hour till you go green. So drivers, double file formation here at Watkins Glen for round 5 of the ERA Sunday Championship. Diamond, platinum, and gold. Points on the line. Who's going to be able to get the jump off the line? In through the right-hander. Staring down as you get ready to go bowling into turn 1 for the ERA Sunday Championship. Over to our Chief Marshal, Jim, who is at the ready to go green. Lights on, and getting ready to go, go, go. Ben X trying to get a jump off the line. Christoph Peterson to the outside. Unnesenberg's trying to go for the inside as they go breaking down into turn 1. It is looking clean, 2-3 cars wide. Ruben Heineke getting put just ahead of Aaron Schengel and Andre Sorodia. They're going 3 wide through turn 1 into turn 2, and it's still a monumental tussle at the front. Ben Hicks trying to break away. Christoph Peterson starting to feel the pressure from Ernest Lindberg's right on the back of him. His own teammate trying to make it all work. A little bit further back as we do see Milestone getting ahead of Karl-Heinz. Goes out a bit wide. Jason Farmer trying to stay into the mix as well. And we do have contact. We have contact at the back with David Roth into pit lane. Let's try and figure out what happened out there with a quick replay. As this is Krzysztof Rolotsky heading into turn 4, trying to keep it all together. What on earth happened? He's got Federico Calgera ahead of him. Oh, there was massive impact just ahead. Unfortunately, a couple of cars getting caught out, and it was a monster Constantina effect. The likes that many of the drivers really didn't want to run into, and quite a few cars broken there. Ruben Heineke, David Roth, Lucas Collab, Lewis Knight, all getting involved in that big impact. That Constantina then turns into quite a horrid affair. Has nowhere to go, and you're still trying to keep your foot planted. As Ben Hicks, Christoph Peterson, and Ernest Lindberg's try and stretch their legs. Kurt Reynolds, Sean Skitter, Milestone. Karl-Heinz has got the pressure from Jason Farmer behind him, trying to close up the distance. Stephen Milano, James, and David Schutten trying to fight it out with one another as we complete our first lap of the race. Ben Hicks just managing to stay ahead of Christoph Peterson on the way through, and now needs to focus on what is going to be the game plan here. But a couple of drivers into pit lane. Rich van Heerd starting out in pit lane is now in 27th position. Aaron Schegel up on Ulrich de Jager, now aiming for Patrick Bars a little bit further up, as that's one of our clean overtakes for lap 2. But Ben Hicks still leads out the pack. Peterson trying to close up in that 4.88, not having an easy affair right there, and has to keep the pressure on at all costs. He's losing touch with Ernest Lindberg's right behind him, so they will have to try and figure out what is going to be the next plan here. Karl-Heinz fighting out for 7th position. He's got Jason Farmer on the back of him. Milestone just ahead as Jason Farmer runs out a little bit wide. That's allowed Schutten and Milano James to get a little bit closer in for the fight. Moving up, however, it's Simon Kusat stuck on the outside. Bearded Badass goes and opens up the door. Patrick Bowles says thank you very much. Get past. Oh, contact between the two as Simon Kusat tried to move back. Didn't quite see Patrick there. Patrick gets past Bearded and now continues on the drive. Aaron right onto the back of them, trying to figure out where they can go. Federico Calgero dealing with the likes of Jim Nielsen. Goes late on the brakes in the marbles to try and look for the inside line. Didn't quite work out in his favor, and we'll have to wait just a fraction longer as it stands. Still drivers putting on a monster impact. Back up to 6th and 7th, it's Milestone and Karl-Heinz. Cole goes a bit wide, loses out the drive. Immediately, Jason Farmer into the toe, trying to pull himself along. Very close call for Chris Wall as he nearly met the wall here at Watkins Glen. Down into turn 1. This is where the Ferrari is a lot stronger, as it can rotate a lot better than the Mustangs. But unfortunately, the front engine Mustang and Aston Martin do have legs coming up the hill through the S's, heading towards the boots. You're going to have to keep in that slipstream, fighting tooth and nail as it stands as they continue on the charge. Karl-Heinz trying to get the run on Milestone, wasn't able to get too much momentum through as they're keeping it nice and consistent. Ooh, big mistake for Milestone, losing out the drive, goes off into the grass. Karl-Heinz says thank you. Jason Farmer as well. Milestone now dealing with Schutten around the outside as he tried to rejoin, forcing Schutten out wide. Schutten immediately tucks right back into him, keeping the pressure on the rear quarter panel, and will be focusing on the charge. Stephen Milano-James hanging back a little bit just to see how this is all going to work out. Shooten up on the inside of Milestone as they go through the right-hander, forcing Milestone to go around the long way around, gets his nose cut off, loses a bit of time. Stephen Milano-James now has an opportunity, along with David Broschke, who continues on the fight right behind them. A big move made by Shooten as he starts ticking his way up through the order. Aaron Schergel going and fighting it out with Bearded just ahead of him. Bearded hoping that he can just go a little bit later on the brakes just to try and close up to Patrick just ahead of him as they continue on the charge. David Young keeping ahead of Federico Calgero, 16th and 17th. Jim Milson down in 18th. Ben Hicks putting in those fastest lap times to keep himself a little bit ahead of Christoph Peterson. And there's nothing in it between the two of them. Christoph Peterson also put in the best lap time with a 143.015 over Ben Hicks's 143.085. So the two of them are blow for blow. They are trading every step of the way. But the question is, how long can they keep this pace? And as Innocentberg starting to save a bit of time. So we do see Chris Wall going and trying to give it a little bit more of a push. He got close to the wall, a bit of an off-track moment. And now will be focusing on the charge. Quick flash of the lights, however, as he tries to let the drivers know ahead of him, like David Broschke. So let's quickly go and take a look at what happened to the number 4 as he ran into a bit of a difficult situation. So this is Chris Wall coming down into turn 1. Goes out wide, and suddenly car exiting pit lane. Roth going and waiting for the cars to come on by. That created contact with the Griffin Sim Racing team car. And unfortunately, didn't quite work out in his favor. And I think that is Ulrich. Is that not Ulrich de Jager? That might be not even Richard van here. That will be Ruben Heineke that came out and had that contact. So Ruben Heineke trying to get out a bit quickly. Loses out a bit of time with that touch with likes of Chris. Unfortunately, I'll have to say that Chris was sort of in the right there. Unfortunately, having the rear turned around a bit, having to refocus on what he needs to do. Peterson onto the back of Hicks. Likes of Lindbergh's losing touch. He's 1 second behind, just not able to close it up. A little bit further back, Carl Heinz, Jason Follman, and Shooten are continuing on their charge. Carl just focusing to try and catch up to Skurt Reynolds, who leads out the Platinums. Ben Hicks leads out the Diamonds, and it's Hanso Foss that leads out the Gold as it stands. So a huge fight to go on. Now, we haven't even hit the 10-minute mark, and quite a few drivers have gone through the pits. Rich van Heed started from pit lane, same as Ruben Heineke needed some work done to his car, and David Roth as well. So some drivers not having an easy time out here. We did start with 30 cars. We down to 29. And still a lot of time on the board. A lot of positions to be made. And a lot of mistakes to avoid on a circuit that seems relatively easy. But soon as the tires start to fade, when they start graining a bit harder, the tires start to let go. You start to have that rear stepping out on you. You also start to consider the amount of understeer. How long can you keep up the pace? And a lot of these drivers are still using the same tires they used in qualifying, as we do see David Young sporting a bit of damage on his Ferrari 296 from the earlier incidents. He's got Jim Milson now starting to gain a little bit of time. Patrick Bowles and Aaron Schergel trying to get a bit closer. Hanso Foss touches the dirt, loses time. Christoph Rolotsky gets on by. Rolotsky takes the lead of the Golds. Hanso Foss down into second of the Golds as he has to try and claw back just a little bit of time in this fight. Back up to our sharp end of the field, now making their way past the start finish line, already starting to open up a big gap over the grid. Ben Hicks and Christoph Peterson keeping the pressure on one another, but at the same time not making any aggressive attacks, not looking for the passes as yet, trying to save those tires to go a little bit further in the race. This is a circuit that does favor those that like to fuel save and like to save their tires, where you can lift and coast through a lot of the corners, especially at the boot. Sean Skitton and Carl Heinz fighting it out with one another. trying to get a little bit more run. And Karl-Heinz stuck on the outside. Sean Skitter on the inside, hard on the brakes, and Skitter's going to have the advantage through the right-hander. Goes out a little wide. Karl-Heinz, unfortunately, also gets it wrong. And now Jason Farmer has a lunge around him. The Ferrari 296 is there, along with David Schutten in that Lexus, trying to put the power down. I mean, this is turning into a huge race, nonetheless, for our drivers, and who's going to be able to keep it going. That being said, we've got to talk about some of the fastest paces we're seeing out here. Ben Hicks sits so far on 224 kilometers as he hits the anchors with Christoph Peterson on the back of him. I mean, these drivers are focusing on some great pace, but how far are they willing to go, trying to push a bit harder? So, the Field of Bones drivers keeping in tandem. Karl-Heinz, Jason Farmer, Schutten, Milestone in a fight. Milestone dealing with Stephen Milano James. We are getting reports, however, that Aaron getting a little bit out in some carnage. The 101 driver not having an easy time out there in the Red Bull colored BMW. Runs in a little bit tight. Aaron immediately onto the back of him, trying to figure out where can they go. Al Perry also in the mix there. As it's late on the anchors, Aaron a little bit of a nudge on the rear to try and get by. Unfortunately, didn't quite plan to be that close. He did manage to out-accelerate him. Al Perry and Lewis Knight are now on top of one another. Two Godzillas joining forces at this point, and they were part of the earlier carnage in through the boot, and now trying to figure out how they can go to the bus stop, as they tend to call it. Ulrich Diaga and Bearded on top of one another, trying to move forward. Along in the back, you can see David Roth lying in 29th position, just circulating at this point, focusing on the drive, focusing on what he needs to do. They have gone through pit lane. They've gone and switched out tires. They've also gone and switched out fuel. So they're going to be working on just trying to keep things alive at the moment. Top end comes in for the Lexus, but it is going to be all about the braking zones that's going to make the impact during the latter part of the races here at Watkins Glen. Milestone, Stephen Milano James, Dave Roschke going out a little bit wide there in the BMW M4 GT3, not able to get the drive to work on. Stephen Milano James, as it stands, he's hoping to push himself just a fraction more. David Young feeling the pressure from Jim Emilsen onto the back of him. Jim, part of the gold division, fighting out against Pro-Am. He wants to try and clear David Young as quick as possible, as Aaron is on the back, and Patrick, who are in the same class as him. Ulrich Diaga having a little bit of a problem, and it seems like he had some contact with David Roth, that core banquet, going and having a bit of a brawl with one of another. So, tough time for drivers trying to make their way around the circuit. David Young not letting the damage on the car to go and slow him down. Jim Nielsen just managing the gap at the moment, ahead and behind, as Aaron is trying to put the pressure on the McLaren that has got some serious top end to work out in its favor. But once again, the Ferrari's extremely nimble around the corners and can fight it out tooth and nail. A little bit softer on the tires as well compared to the McLaren. So we will see Aaron trying his best every step of the way to keep Jim under pressure to let those tires start to fall off a cliff. As our groups continue on, and drivers trying to figure out what is going to be the next plan. Milestone keeping ahead of Stephen Milano James. Stephen hoping to try look for the inside line. Late lunge. He's getting sick and tired of seeing the Teletubbies on the back of Milestone's car, and looks to try keep the pressure up as much as possible here at Watkins Glen, just losing out under acceleration. And we are getting reports, however, David Young has lost out a position to Jim Nielsen. Aaron Schegel going and losing out a bit of time as he fights out to try get by. Lewis Knight also getting caught in the mix as they continue on the charge. Patrick Miles, L. Perry, Bearded got caught out, stuck on the outside, and immediately the likes of David Roth gets on by as well. Now he's trying to unlap himself at the moment, and he has got an absolute dogfight ahead of him. L. Perry, Patrick, Lewis Knight, Aaron, and David Young continue to run in tow and push one another that little bit harder. But it is Jim who's starting to open up the gap in 18th position. He wants to try and break away from this group, knowing that you can get swallowed up. And instead of having one car to worry about, you're going to be attacked on all sides. You get left, right, and center as the entire field looks to try and take that 18th position away. You can see how hard David is fighting the car to keep Aaron at bay. Aaron running out a little bit wide, trying to figure out if he can just get a little bit more momentum to work out in his favor. Roth tries to look for the inside line. He's hoping to just get by, and El Perry lets him go through. So El Perry going and thinking, all right, we're going to let David Roth go on by. He's a little bit further up in the order. But that being said, he can be utilized as a wrecking ball to open up the door. Simon Kusat straight lining Hunso Foss. The big Bentley making it work in its favor as Hunso Foss had to tap off in that Mercedes-Benz GT3 AMG Evo and losing out to the 2019 chassis of the Bentley Continental. Patrick Miles losing a bit of time as well as he loses it to likes of Lewis Knight. David Young continues on the charge, but take a look how close that Lewis Knight has gotten onto the back of David Young as it stands. An absolute brawl between them, and immediately this is starting to show that David Young is starting to feel that pressure coming in and affecting him. Patrick allowing the likes of David Roth to get on by. A very clever move, and that also helps him to try and move through the order. He did it in the right place to cancel out what El Perry was trying to do, to utilize David Roth as a wrecking ball to get on by, so he can focus on the defense now and not worry about what's going to happen. But this also does give him the opportunity to utilize a slipstream as Lewis Knight a little bit slow off the exit. David Roth tried to look for the inside line. He second guessed it, however, doesn't want to get too much into the fight. But let's see if Lewis Knight is also going to do the same thing. Go and allow David Roth by and see if he can utilize him to open up the door to the likes of David Young, who is fighting tooth and nail at this point to try and keep that Ferrari in check. But into turn one, that's for certain. As David Roth trying to figure out how can he get on by, runs out a bit wide, up through the S's. Lewis Knight and likes of David Young continue on their fight. Take a look. David Young loses a bit of time through the S's and unfortunately goes completely skew. Something went on with that car that he was just not happy about. Let's go back 30 seconds, take a look on board of what actually happened, because that was a bit of a strange move on David Young's part into the S's. So in through turn one, all looking fine. Gets on the power. In through the first S. And just can't turn the steering enough. Moves out of the way to allow the field to go through. But strange to not been able to turn right. Rejoins, but really, really strange course of affair there for David Young. He lost out a tremendous amount of positions. I wonder if the damage is a little bit more than planned, and he's starting to feel it. Milestone dealing with Stephen Milano James onto the back of him. Stephen hoping to pick up the pace, lying in 10th. Milestone sits in 9th at current, and Stephen Milano James needing to get a little bit closer to likes of Shooten, one of his class runners. Stephen looks for the inside line, gets past Milestone. Miles looking for the cutback, and he does. As Stephen gets it unsteady out of turn one, that has gone and cost Milestone a bit of time and brought into the matter of fact of David Borschke. But Stephen Milano James is also dealing with Ruin Heineke that's gone on by, a back marker that will be trying to open up the gap between them. Christoph Rolotsky and Simon Kusat fight it out. Lamborghini against the big Bentley. That seems to be a little bit more on rails here compared to the last race. Simon Kusat hoping to fight his way through the field as we come on by, and you can see just got some tremendous pace over the Lamborghini. And it's all about braking zone into the bus stop. Gets it beautifully done. Christoph Rolotsky goes and backs off the throttle. He doesn't want to get into that fight. Rather wait a little bit longer, focusing on the long game here. Fuel and tires to last the race, to push him a little bit closer towards the end. Lewis Knight getting ahead of Patrick as it stands. El Perry continuing to put on the charge with Bearded on the back of him, looking to move his way up through the order. So the field's starting to open up now between drivers. No one going for the pit stops as yet. They don't want to pull the trigger as yet. They want to focus on their drive to make it work. As we jump on board the Ford Mustang of Bearded, staring at the back of El Perry, who tries to close up on Patrick. And let's jump on board with this Nismo Los Pontos Hermanos, the Nissan GTR, as he keeps Patrick, the Red Bull Racing machine, just ahead of him. Down the gears he goes to keep it all in check, but El Perry just not having the grip to work out in his favor. That has gone and allowed Patrick a little bit of breathing room. Immediately he catches up to Lewis Knight. It does look like the Lexus starting to, well, the Nissan starting to struggle out of corner exits. Maybe the tires starting to take a bit of a hammering here. It is cold out on the circuit, but it has picked up by 1 degree. At 16 degrees temperature, still cold out there in terms of air temperature. This is going to help out the turbocharged cars, such as the BMW and the Nissan. Both sport likes the turbochargers, and the Ferrari 296, your naturally aspirated cars, the likes of McLaren and the likes of the Ford Mustang, will be battling tooth and nail to keep it going. But also in the case of Christoph Peterson in the 488 with Ernest Lindberghs, these 488s are naturally aspirated V8s that are behind them. And unfortunately, that doesn't quite work out. Ben Hicks, also in a naturally aspirated Lexus, that V8, that small block V8 is putting out about 500 horsepower to make it work out in his favor. Well, he's utilizing every bit of it as Christoph Peterson trying to close up that gap, not having an easy time. And it's just focus on managing his lap times. 1:43 is the lap time to be in if you wish to fight it out for first, second. But also, Ernest Lindbergh's a little bit further back, is in third place. He is 2 seconds off the back of him and just waiting for an opportunity. Aaron getting ahead of Jim Emilson, who now looks to fight it out. It's not child's play anymore. It's all about Chucky going and bringing out the knives to take the fight to the Cyber Racing team. Aaron now looks on the momentum. Steve Milana James into the pits and out of the top 10, dropping down. He's going and pulling a little bit of an early stop. David Young exactly the same. He's into the pit lane, I think, getting some tremendous work done to his car, so he doesn't battle too much during the course of the ongoing race. Carl Heinz very close to the back of Sean Skitter. That Honda NSX got some serious pull in and out through the corners, and Carl hoping to make it work out in his favor. Look towards the inside line. Fortunately, just not getting the same grip as the Honda on the way through, and it's playing into Sean Skitter's favor at this point. Doesn't have the top end, but definitely a bit more nimble in and out of the corners to try and keep the gap between himself and Cole Heinz. And that also does bring into an interesting fact, because just ahead of Sean Skitter is Skurt Reynolds, who leads out the Platinum class in 4th place. Cole Heinz needs to clear the likes of Sean Skitter to be able to fight out, but once again, Sean Skitter utilizing Cole Heinz to hold back Jason Farmer that little bit more as they are fighting for position. So currently at the top of the standings, Ben Hicks leads out our Diamond. Christoph Peterson in 2nd place. Ernest Lindberghs goes and finishes up with 3rd place for our Diamonds. For our Platinums, it's Skurt Reynolds, Cole Heinz, and Miles Stone that are our top 3 for the Platinum. And we move on to our Golds. It is Christoph Rolotsky, Hanso Foss, and Federico Calgero that are fighting for that gold position. You can see Jason Farmer now getting a little bit antsy. He's darting around left and right, trying to figure out how he can get past Cole Heinz to try and get a bit closer to the likes of Sean Skitter, who's opening up the gap just a little bit further as the race continues on. Steve Milana James comes out of the pit lane, leading out those that have gone through the pits, and was spent 32.7 seconds in the box. And Al Perry comes out of the pits. He's also done his pit stop. David Young, after a bit of repair work done to his car, lies in 27th position. Ruben Heineke needing to try and pick up some time. Remember, he's got a 5-second penalty, but he has visited the pits already, but it didn't count as a pit stop. Ulrich Diaga dives into pit lane, same as David Roth, needing to do one more pit stop. Ulrich Diaga trying to get an early stop, and that is going to be a bit of a back and forth chat to the likes of Jason Farmer. Now I'm trying to take a look at some of the retirees in this race, and I think one of the retirees is actually Andre Sorodio, who I don't see on our timing board. No, he does. He's in 12th. Andre Sorodio in 12th, making his return. He's trying to close up the gap to Chris Wall ahead of him. The two of them have battled on and off during the course of the different seasons here at ERA. But it's Karl-Heinz and Jason Farmer continuing on their fight. Christoph Peterson and Ben Hicks are fighting out. Interesting enough, Ernest Lindbergs dives into pit lane, 35 minutes, leaving his teammate out there, but maybe to try and undercut the likes of Scott Reynolds, Sean Skitter, Karl-Heinz, Jason Farmer, who come on by. So an interesting play done by the likes of Ernest Lindbergs to just try and get himself sorted and continue on the drive. Bearded onto the back of Patrick as they continue on. Let's actually try and keep an eye on this one because David Schutten comes in, Milestone and Chris Wall as well to try and sort out the undercut of Ernest Lindbergs, who pitted out of that top 10. Karl-Heinz looks around the outside of Sean Skitter, the Mustang trying to get the drive. Skitter having the advantage through the corners. Oh, a little bit of a mistake from Karl-Heinz. He costs himself a bit of pace, comes across the front of Jason Farmer, and that causes a little bit of Constantine effect. Jason Farmer had to come off the gas, wait for an opportune moment, try to go around the outside of Cole. Couldn't make it stick, however. Cole now starts to try and get a little bit closer. Jason Farmer feeling the pressure, wanting to try and get by and just not having the momentum to do so. Outbraked himself into the right-hander. Takes a late apex, but will not get the drive needed to get the launch on Karl-Heinz's Mustang. We'll have to wait yet again. Rich Van Eerde comes out. He has got the likes of Ernest Lindbergs right on the back of him. Now Rich Van Eerde lost a little bit of time. The 131 not having an easy time out there. Through turn 1 as the rear slightly stepping out underneath him. In through turn 2, runs out a bit wide and touches the grass out of 3. Keeps it out the wall, but only just to try and keep on going. Richard going and counting his 9 lives on that one. Ernest Lindbergs now up into 16th position. This is our marker to play into effect. Ulrich Diaga with a 30-second stop-go penalty for track limits exceeded. And that is a factor we need to talk about. Track limits can throw you out, and it's quite easy to do. The second last corner coming into the left-hander, if you go 2 or 4 wheels out over that white line, you start to pick up track warnings. You get 3 warnings before you get penalized with a stop-go penalty. Jason Farmer pits from 7th position, and he will be trying to get the run on Ernest Lindbergs. That's a little bit further down. This is going to be interesting to see how it plays into effect with Ernest Lindbergs and Jason Farmer. Has he pulled the right move? Federico Calgero into the pits as well, trying to get himself sorted out. Here comes Lindbergs to gain another position over Calgero, over Farmer, and keeps up the charge. Farmer not coming out of the pits just as yet, will fall behind. This is a move starting to come into play. Jason Farmer loses out to Ernest Lindbergs. Lindbergs into 14th and is still the bar for every driver to consider how the pit stops are going. Once again, took an earlier stop compared to his teammate Christoph Peterson, who keeps pressure on Ben Hicks, hoping for any opportune moment to get on by, flirting with those track limits as Christoph tries to get it going. Ben Hicks goes for the pit, trying to stop the undercut coming in with the likes of Ernest. Christoph Peterson takes over the lead of the race. Kurt Reynolds will be taking 2nd place as it stands, with Sean Skitter closely following behind Karl-Heinz in 5th. At 6th place, David Borschke trying to close up that gap immediately as it stands. So now we're starting to play the big question, the big games. What is going to happen here? How the driver's going to work? A stop-go 30-second for the likes of Ruben Heineke as he pulls into the pits to serve that. He's got 3 laps to get it done. Decides now is the time to make it work and get it out of the way. That track limits exceeded. Absolutely brutal to deal with. Patrick and Bearded now fighting out. You can see Bearded runs over the curb on the left-hand side a little bit too much as he tries to get any sort of drive on the BMW M4 GT3 of Patrick Bell's just ahead of him. This is going to be a close fight between the two. They've been back and forth with one another, and they've got Lewis Knight for a bit of company, whose lap times have been less than optimal at the moment. Hasn't been keeping a solid average as he tries to focus on the drive. So, drivers figuring out what they can do. Ben Hicks comes out ahead of Ernest Lindbergs. He's in 13. You can just see how close they are on circuit, right into shot. Ben Hicks comes on by into the bus stop, and right behind him, Ernest Limburg's trying to capitalize at the moment. Bearded and Patrick are fighting out a little bit further up the road, with Lewis Knight now into the fray as well. Lewis keeping a solid defense. Patrick tried to look for that apex, didn't work out in his favor, and has to wait a little bit longer. Bearded immediately trying to go back onto that attack, look towards the outside, wasn't able to get the drive. Lewis Knight now starting to feel the pressure, and he will see in his mirrors a BMW and a Mustang that will be fighting with him, and they cannot count out that our former leader of the race, Ben Hicks, is also closing at a rate of knots right behind them, and he's dealing with Ernest Limburg, so he wants to try and clear this fight as much as possible. Sorodio into pit lane, trying to get himself sorted out. Cole Hines up against the rear bumper of Sean Skitter, tries to look around the outside, late on the brakes, swings it in, and it is going to be the Honda NSX keeping up the momentum. Cole Hines had to lift a little bit more than planned, runs out a bit wide. Sean Skitter going and holding that third place as much as possible. So Skitter and Cole Hines runs out a bit wide, both pushing the cars a little bit harder. Now the question is, are they going to keep a single set of tires? We've gone past the halfway mark, and everyone that's gone into pit lane has changed tires. Is there going to be another strategy that's going to come into play? As we do see Cole Hines once again snaps to the outside. He just can't lift, likes of Sean Skitter off that inside line to play into his favor. Thus far, Ben Hicks up into 8th place. He's got Patrick just ahead of him, trying to figure out how he can get by up on the inside. Carries a lot of momentum through. Worked out in his favor there. Ben Hicks now goes up into 7th place. Well, the likes of Ernest Limburg's losing out the time. Has to try and catch up to Bearded, Patrick, and then sees the likes of Ben just up the road. Scott Reynolds pulls into the pits to get his pit stop done, and does so. Christoph Peterson still leads the race and yet to pit. Sean Skitter in 2nd. Cole Hines in 3rd. So Peterson leads out our diamonds, Cole Hines leads out our platinums, and Hanso Foss, still needing to pit and got a 15-second success penalty, is in 6th place. He needs to still pit. Thankfully, likes of Bearded and Patrick are also needing to get their pit stops out of the way, so he needs to try and keep that gap open as much as possible. David Brodsky dives into pit lane as well, with Scott Reynolds to try and get himself sorted out, and continuing their affair. Bearded and Ernest now fighting out. Bearded keeps it nice and tight, dives into the pits behind Patrick, and that was just as Ernest Limburg gets on by. Rich Vanieta dives into the pits, as we saw him just in that camera shot, trying to focus on where they need to go. So it remains to be likes of Peterson, Skitter, Hines, and Foss to get their pit stops done and dusted. Question comes in is, where is Ben Hicks going to come out? He is currently lying in 5th place. Hanso Foss is going to be the next car to try and overtake Cole Hines as well, a little bit further up the road into 3rd place. Our top 4 yet to do their final pit stop here at Watkins Glen. Only 1 retirement in the race, however, and drivers are starting to focus on what they need to do. The temperature starting to stabilize a little bit more. 27 minutes to go here at Watkins Glen for round 5 of the ERA Sunday Championship. Now, you do have a drop round, but the last thing you want to do is utilize that drop round on a DNF. You want to try and score as many points as possible, as we saw at the beginning of the show, that there is literally some that are tied in points and others have 1 point separating them. Patrick with a stop-go 32nd, and Bearded with a stop-go 32nd. That was coming out of pit lane. They went and got off the pit limiter a little bit too early, and both getting a stop-go 30-second penalty. Not going to be happy campers in that car, that is for sure, as they now have to try and work out what are they going to do. That's going to drop them right out of the top 3 positioning for our gold class. Cole Hines into the pits, and that leaves Sean Skitter and Christoph Peterson to their own devices at this point as they continue on. Milestone has got Chris Wall on the back of him, trying to figure out how they can work their paces out. currently fighting out for 13th and 14th position and seeing the leader get on by. Hanso Voss, 15 seconds. Now, the question is the stop-go 30 going to come in for the rest of our drivers as the pressure starts to build up and you get a little bit antsy? You come off that pit limiter by either selecting second gear or just tapping the pit limiter button and getting off it a little bit too early. Has to stop go 30 seconds. That impacts the race. Unfortunately for our gold division, Patrick and Bearded will be dropping out of that top 3 positioning and will be having to fight with the rest of the field. So lots and lots of hard work to do. 2 drivers yet to complete their pit stops. A little bit up the road as Sean Skitter just dives into the pits. David Roth goes in through pit lane and out. Clean stop for him. But now Christoph Peterson, the only driver out on circuit, focusing on the drive as it stands in through the right-hander. Really gets on the acceleration, trying to figure out how much momentum can he carry through. Remember, he's got a 15-second stop. Sean Skitter had an extra 10 seconds added to his stop. And that will be no one's allowed to touch the car until the penalty is served. Then they can refuel and put tires on. So for Christoph Peterson, his game plan right now is to try and open up nearly a minute to Ben Hicks. It takes roughly 32 seconds to make it work out in the favor, and Ben Hicks taking the fastest lap of the race. That is an extra point being thrown in for him. He's going to be happy with that one, and he can try and keep the lead in the championship by having the fastest lap and to ensure that he keeps ahead of Christoph Peterson as soon as he gets into the pits. Sean Skitter a little bit further down, dropping out of the running order. Skurt Reynolds up into 5th. Patrick coming out of the pits as we just saw by. Here comes Cole Heinz. He's gone past Sean Skitter. So is Schutten. And here is Sean Skitter coming out of pit lane and rejoining the race as he focuses on the charge. Lewis Knight fighting out with Hanso Voss. Looks for the inside line. Late on the brakes, the Godzilla trying to make it work in the Pennzoil Racing colours. Nice tribute livery to the early days of the Nissan Skylines that used to race as GT cars around the world and also in endurance series. It's been, the Pennzoil colours are just absolutely synonymous with the Nissan and the Nissan Skyline, going and winning out in quite a few races, also participating in the case of Le Mans, Sebring, and also Bathurst 12-hour as well. Hanso Voss and Lewis Knight continue on their drive, and there is Bearded diving into the pits for the stop-go 32nd. Christoph Peterson into pit lane, and this is going to be interesting because how much space has he opened up to Ben Hicks in 2nd place? Ernest Lindberg's in 3rd, trying to put the hammer down as well, as here comes Ben Hicks. Schutten comes out and unfortunately manages to catch a wall, so Schutten not looking so good. Losing out to Sean Skitter, Stephen Malone, and James David Bolschke made a mistake. So coming out of the corner, all looking clear in a bit of no man's land. So this isn't a tap. This is the car physically just going and losing the rear as he comes out of the corner exit. Runs out a bit wide, taps the grass. Ooh, change and drive, bang, into the wall. And unfortunately, big damage to the car right there. Losing out 3 positions, but also going to be having a bit of a nightmare of a drive at current. So Ben Hicks takes the lead of the race with Ernest Lindberg's. Christoph Peterson comes out in 3rd place. And right behind him is Jason Farmer that's trying to put the pressure on. Skurt Reynolds out in 5th. Will be smiling ear to ear. Leading out the Platinum with Cole Heinz a little bit further back. And David Borschke in that 9th position. Schutten, drive-through penalty for track limits exceeded. And that will drop him out of the top 10 once again. Schutten getting the short straw for the ERA Highway Patrol. Drive-through penalty, a 2nd trip through pit lane. That is 30 seconds thrown out of the door. And top 10 chance done and dusted. So less than ideal situations to contend with there. And we'll be hoping that he can just keep the momentum up. Running out very, very wide. Going quite aggressive on his driving style as well. Frustration starting to play a bit of a factor. And also trying to push that a little bit harder to maintain that top 10. Chris Wall up against Miles Stone. Our closest fight currently on circuit for 12th and 13th position. Miles Stone fighting out in his Aston Martin up against Chris Wall. Both have the same amount of horsepower. Both are using 2019 chassis. Both are going and fighting out. Ben Hicks, once again, putting in the fastest lap time of the race. 142.930. And that is more than likes of Werner Slimberg's with a 143.232 as his last lap. Christoph Peterson, his fastest lap time was 157.755. So not quite the pace that he would like to carry. Simon Kusat dives on the inside of Christoph Rolotsky as they try to get the momentum. And Bearded still with that stop-go 30-second penalty. Schutten sits with a 10-second penalty as well. Schutten with that drive through, going and getting it sorted out now. But there is no more time to get into the pits as we enter the final 20 minutes of the race. Ben Hicks leads it out the race with Werner Slimberg sitting in second place. Christoph Peterson lies in third with Jason Farmer on his tail. Leading out our Platinums, it is Kurt Reynolds along with Karl Heinz and David Broschke in ninth position, trying to close up that gap. 11th goes to Miles Stone with Chris Wall, but we are getting reports though. Sean Skitter losing a bit of control of his car. The number 8 not having it. Number 13 losing a little bit of time. Let's quickly take a look at what happened. Sean Skitter. This is into the bus stop. So going in, maybe taking a little bit too tight as he turned in. Got the car very upset. Avoided the walls. Yeah, over the curbs, and that was it. Just loses that little bit of traction. Beautiful sliding catch to try and keep it all going. But the tires are going to be blisteringly hot. And unfortunately, grip is going to be at an all-time low. Sean Skitter down in 8th place and getting it. Likes of Cole Heinz and Steve Milano James are going to be happy about that one. They've got a little bit more room to play with. So the drivers focusing on the charge. This is round 5 of 7, ladies and gentlemen. And this is where it gets rather interesting because there is no more time for you to go and dawdle around. You need to put your effort in now to make it work, to carry the points over to the next races. And for many of the drivers, as we do see Bearded diving into the pits, he's trying to serve that stop-go 30-second penalty for getting off the pit limiter a little bit too early during the course of his first stop. And that is a nightmare affair because this will be his 3rd time visiting the pits. First time to get the work done on the car. Second time was to serve a stop-go 30-second. And now for a 3rd time, he's got it. He spent a minute in the pits on penalties alone for the driver, and that is a absolute nightmare case scenario for Bearded, who has got some serious momentum, but Watkins Glen and those track limits become a little bit of an issue. But also, you're not paying attention to the cones. So once you get past the yellow cones, you can get off that pit limiter, engage second gear and go. But the moment that you try to push a little too hard, you will be caught out. Rich Vernier up on the inside of Jim Nielsen, makes it stick only just as he gets on by. Richard on the climb. Jim did share a bit of paint with him as Chucky's got to leave his mark on the side of that Ferrari 296 of Richard Vernier, part of the Project Vapor team, and continuing on his bit of momentum throughout the course of this race. Lewis Knight just off into the fringes, waiting for his opportunity to close up to the likes of the Ferrari and McLaren just up the road from him. But he's got to be so careful not to have them drop off the pack. Christoph Peterson takes the fastest lap of the race. That is the point added to him, trying to keep that championship hopes alive. He's sitting in 3rd place, but if he can hold the fastest lap of the race, that's an extra point for the championship and still keeps him in contention for it as well. So he doesn't want to lose too much time here, but this is absolutely crucial for the Fear the Bones driver. Scott Reynolds up against the back of Jason Farmer. Jason Farmer lying 4th of our diamonds has got the leader of our platinum, Scott Reynolds, onto the back of him. And now Scott Reynolds got to play this a bit smart. Whether he's going to go on the attack and might land up with a bit of an issue, or sit behind Jason Farmer, utilize the tow to carry through to the end and keeps him away from Cole Heinz, who's trying to close up behind. So Scott Reynolds hoping to make it work as we jump on board with him. Jason Farmer in that 296 Ferrari just ahead in the blue and black colors as he continues on his drive. As drivers continuing on, we got Chris Wall and Milestone. They're still fighting it out. Ulrich de Jager in the background there. Laps down, waiting for his opportunity to get out and get going. Bearded, unfortunately, still stuck in pit lane. And I think possibly out of the race as well. Bearded might have called it quits. El Perry and Richard Oakes, they are fighting with one another. Not quite what we're going to see from the Ford Mustang and Bearded. Hopefully they can try and rectify that problem and get him back out on the circuit. Any points is absolutely crucial for the championship. Jim Nielsen dealing with Lewis Knight. Now, we did talk about Lewis Knight waiting on the fringes for this exact opportunity to get into the fray and to get into the brawl. Richard Oakes now also dealing with Al Perry, who's just gotten past him. In through, and Richard catching a beautiful slide in through the bus stop, and once again having to catch it on the exit, going over the curves, bottoming out, and just trying to fight the car through. Chris Wall and Milestone keeping the pressure on one another as they try and catch up to Andre Sorodio, just a fraction up the road from them. Sorodio holding the top 10 as it stands, that final spot of the top 10, as he continues on his drive through the order. Always a tough fight indeed. Chris Wall trying to make the pass happen around the inside, around the outside. Can't make it work. Milestone keeping it nice and wide, heading into the bus stop. Chris Wall looks for the inside, takes a big lunge to make it work. Milestone backed out to allow Chris Wall on by, so there's no contact between the two. A little bit of clever thinking there, but now needs to try and figure out what can he do to close up the distance. Lewis Knight and Jim Nielsen continuing to put the pressure on one another as they carry on the race. The question comes in, will Ben Hicks be able to set the fastest lap time of the race? Because Christoph Peterson holds that extra point to keep him in the championship. Ernest Lindbergh's 2.4 seconds back on him. Remember, he is also fighting in the championship, lying in fourth place as it stands, tied in points for our Diamond Division. And Christoph Peterson, yet again, putting the fastest lap time of the race, 142.662 over the likes of Ben Hicks with his 143.385. So Christoph Peterson trying to open up that distance a little bit more, showing that he can take the fight. And that extra point is highly crucial for the championship as Richard Oakes and Al Perry continue to brawl it out with one another. Going that extra little bit mile. Richard Oakes looking a lot neater this time through the bus stop, and it really made a difference as likes of El Perry not having a good exit and losing out a little bit of time there. Once again, it's all about how hard you're going to be attacking the curbs. You can really start putting some pressure into it, but this is going to be a tough time. So Aaron Schugel fights it a little bit further up in 21st position, and he's wanting to stay right away from this fight. 12.6 seconds from El Perry and Richard Oakes, and that is going to be happy days for Aaron, who's had a little bit of a nightmare run off the start of this race, down in 21st position, trying to get into that top 3 of the gold division. He's got Calgero and Foss that he has to clear first before he can stand on that final spot of the podium for the likes of our gold division. Chris Wall and Sorodio now fighting it out. Milestone keeping the pressure behind, focusing on his charge. 12 minutes remain of this race, and you can see the drivers starting to feel it as they start to slip and slide. The tires starting to have a big drop off. Let's take a look at who's gained the most and lost the most. The highest gain of the time, Simon Kusat, started in 29th position, now up into 14th. He's gained 15 positions during the course of this race. Unfortunately, there's a couple of drivers that have missed out the opportunity to climb. First of one of them is going to be the likes of Rune Heineke with 15 points and David Roth with 12 down. And that is going to be a big hurt for both drivers. Unfortunately, due to the earlier contacts during the course of the race, that threw them down the order. Sorodio losing time. Chris Wall in the slipstream. Sorodio's got to be rather careful here. He has been out of the car for some time, and Chris Wall knows exactly there's a bit of ring rust for the likes of Sorodio, and he can bring Milestone as a little bit of a brawl as well. So Chris has got to clear Sorodio as they continue the drive on. Look towards the outside line. Serodio going to try and hold the inside as much as possible to have the advantage into the right-hander. But the Aston Martin legging it down the straight will try and power his way through, sweeps across the nose. And Serodio losing out of position, nearly having Miles Stone joining him. Miles Stone looks for the undercut, tries to put his nose in through the right-hander, couldn't make it stick. Out of bus stop. Miles Stone now needs to focus on likes of Serodio. Chris Wall up into that top 10 and focusing on his drive to fight his way through. Schutten, however, lands up with a problem. The 178 driver down the order, not having a good time out. So let's quickly take a look at what happened to Schutten. That got all wrong. So all looking fine. Now I think once he hit bus stop, that is where it all fell apart. So in through the right-hander, into a quick left, short straight, another left, into a quick right. So all looking fine, but here's where it all goes wrong. Took too much curb, bottomed out, and up against the wall. Yet again, the car taking substantial damage and throwing him down the order. Not what Schutten wanted to deal with as he waits in pit lane to get a toes done and get a bit of repair work on the car. The team will be rather frantic to get that Lexus back out onto the circuit to just score as many points as possible. Serodio in a bit of an Aston Martin sandwich. And take a look at Ulrich Diaga. He's lurking in the background. He's watching this fight. He's still got to unlap himself, but he has got the best seat in the house to see these guys absolutely brawl and also start to feed some information back. If there is any incidents that happen on circuit, he can start radioing in to Jason Farmer and saying, listen, there's an accident at this corner. Keep an eye on it, as he continues on the momentum to try and get into that third place position. The final step of the podium, he needs to get past Christoph Peterson as much as he can. Hanso Voss keeping the pressure on Jim Nielsen as it goes, as these three still run nose to tail. Federico Calgero, who's looking to score some big points here, is just sitting out of that top three. And Hanso Voss giving it everything he's got in that Mercedes AMG GT3, trying to guard the inside line. And you can see Jim Nielsen not worrying about too much as Federico Calgero tries to go around the outside, tries to go for the cutback, couldn't make it stick. However, Hanso Voss keeping it nice and wide to try and defend for his life. 8 minutes and 23 seconds to go, and it's still a race up and down through the field. It's Ben Hicks, Ernest Lindbergs, and Christoph Peterson leading overall and the Diamond class. But for our Platinum, Skurt Reynolds holds first place, and he's going to be smiling ear to ear. But third place is between all three, and this is for the Gold Division of Hanso Voss. Jim Emilson are fighting out with the likes of Federico Calgero in the clutches as well, as they continue on their bit of momentum. Now, Jim Nielsen is lying second in our Gold Division, and Voss hoping to usurp that and get in for the proper run. Skurt Reynolds up against the back of Jason Farmer. Doesn't need to go on the attack, but it's a sense of pride now to try and get an overall win up into fourth place. Not just getting the class win. Skurt Reynolds, the Fear the Bones team, trying to get closer to his teammates, likes of Christoph Peterson and Ernest Lindbergs. And this will also try and hold back Jason Farmer just a little bit more, so he doesn't have to concern himself in a absolute brawl. An interesting play by players. We do see Jason Farmer tap off the gas and allow Skurt Reynolds to come on by. He's focusing on his charge, get a little bit of momentum to try and close up the field as fast as possible. They're not fighting for class position, but that being said, now there's going to be the interesting factor. Will Skurt Reynolds pull Jason Farmer along to try and break down that 10-second deficit to the likes of Christoph Peterson, who holds third place in this race? Jim Nielsen losing a bit of time. Hanso Voss immediately snapping to the right-hand side. Couldn't quite get the drive. Had to brake on the apex to try and slow the car down just enough. Behind the McLaren 720S Evo of the likes of Jim Nielsen. Calgero starting to lose track of this fight. And Hanso Voss aiming to try and take that second place away. from the likes of Jim Nielsen. It is still a proper brawl between the Mercedes and McLaren. Looks on the inside, couldn't quite make it stick, but is showing intent. I want to get past. I will make this happen, and I'm not afraid to put my nose in with a bit of a send to try and make it work. And that has shaken Jim Nielsen. Runs out a bit wide, touches dirt, loses drive, and this is going to help out. Hanso Foss up into second place. Jim Nielsen goes out wide. Federico Calgero getting into the brawl, stuck on the outside, looks for the cutback out of the final corner, keeps the power on. Calgero hoping for a bit of straight line horsepower to play. Fortunately, didn't work out in his favor. Jim Nielsen holds third place as it stands, and Foss starting to check out of the fight. 1.3 seconds up the road. Still a tough brawl between them all. Aaron Schugel, a little bit further down in 20th position, is just watching the fight, hoping for these two to have a critical mistake that will throw them out of the race, as Federico Calgero around the outside. Oh, close call for both McLaren side by side. Federico catching the car as it snaps around him. Jim managing to hold that top in speed and went over the curbs, trying not to bottom the car out too badly through the exits. Jason Farmer onto the back of Scott Reynolds. They do see Richard Oakes just ahead of him. Richard Oakes, a blue flag driver, will be able to hold his racing line, but he is not to fight the passing car. So no jumping out of the way. You can be courteous. Oh, Richard Oakes gets it wrong in front of Skirt, and Reynolds narrowly saves that one. Oh, Farmer getting caught out as well. Reynolds runs out wide. Farmer nearly into the back of Richard Oakes and has lost the drive to Skirt Reynolds. This is a tough pill to swallow. Richard Oakes miles out of the way, but Jason Farmer had 4th place on the cards, right within arm's reach. He did let the Skirt Reynolds go on by, but didn't factor in the likes of the back markers being into effect. So a quick weave of the tires to just keep himself going. And just a quick hello to the crowd as well. Likes of our 14th position, Christoph Rolotsky in first for our gold division, fighting out ahead of Richard van Heerden, who's in the platinum division. Lewis Knight joins in the platinum division, but take a look at the gap. Hanso Foss 4.7 seconds back from Lewis Knight, who's 8.5 seconds back from Richard van Heerden, and Richard sitting 1.5 seconds off that. So there is a huge bit of space between them. Sean Skitter onto the back of Stephen Malone. James Federico Calgero loses a little bit of time as well, trying to keep up the pace, but that did allow Ben Hicks to come on by. Ben Hicks going to be happy. He's clearing the traffic quite quickly. Ernest Lindbergh lies in second place, hoping for his drive to work out in his favor. Christoph Peterson holds 3rd place in the final 2 minutes and 53 seconds. So if you want to get a pass done and dusted, you're going to have to do it now, as the time starts to tick away. Our leaders will be eyeing out what can they do to ensure they can just get to that flag. How close can they make it work? A little bit of a lift needed to try and keep the momentum, but it's all for points here. Sean Skitter gets past the likes of Stephen Milano James, both of them fighting out in the Diamond Division. Take a look, David Broschke, who runs 3rd of the Platinums, closed up at a rate of knots. Track Tool Team coming into play, getting out very, very wide. Stephen Milano James trying to defend the line. Sorodio, Milestone side by side. Sorodio got the inside. Miles gets the pass done and dusted, and now hoping to get a little bit more up through the climb. Sorodio out of the championship, but is lying at the bottom for all the Diamond divisions. He still wants to keep up the brawl here. He wants to try and get that top 10. Chris Wall holds the final spot in the top 10. Milestone and Sorodio will have to keep a very close eye on it. So we do see David Broschke up on the inside of Stephen Milano James. Gets the pass done and dusted. Can he get on the power early enough? And does so. Stephen Milano James now needs to keep in the toe. David Broschke, who holds 8th place, will keep up the drive as much as possible. So 1 minute and 26 seconds left. Our leader going through the bus stop. Going to be smiling ear to ear on this one with Ernest Lindbergh's 2.9 seconds back. third place is 8.4 seconds back. Christoph Peterson pitted in a little too late, and that has cost him severely during the course of this race, as we do see Malsone and likes of Andre Sorodio fighting their way through, trying to get a bit more drive. Fortunately, 2 retirements out of the race. The likes of Bearded, 3 retirements. Bearded, unfortunately, out of the race, being one of our latter of the competitors to not get to see the checkered flag. Rich Finietta all over the back of Rolotsky as they make their way through the second last corner into the final corner. Rolotsky in that Lamborghini utilizing the V10 to his advantage, try and open up the gap away from Richard van Heerd, who was on a stellar drive into the rear spoiler of Christoph Rolotsky. Takes the dive, tries to make it work into turn 1, going to stretch it out. Rolotsky stuck on the outside as they side by side through the S's. Richard just having a little bit of momentum, slides across the nose of Rolotsky and continues on, as we just heard from the likes of our race control. The leader is on the final lap. Ben Hicks is continuing on the drive. Hanso Voss just ahead of him will be smiling to see the leader to get past him. Ernest Limburg's down in second place, trying to carry the momentum. Peterson still holds the fastest lap time of the race. That is an extra point for the championship to work out in his favor, and if it's going to be enough to fight his way through. So Ernest Limburgs and Christoph Peterson will continue on their drive. They're going to figure out what is the game plan here, how far they're willing to go, with the likes of Scott Reynolds leading out the Platinum, Karl Heinz in second place of the Platinum, David Borschke holding third. A little bit further down, Christoph Rolotsky, Hanso Voss, and Jim Nielsen are our top 3 for the gold division. As we continue on the drive, Hanso Voss now trying to pull himself along to try and hold the second place, and also not going to pull him into first. Christoph Rolotsky still has a lot of space, and he's got Lewis Knight to overtake first, but he will be coming across the line to hold second place in the gold division as Ben Hicks makes his way through. It has been a clean sweep for him. Tried to put in a little bit earlier, worked out in his favor, got some good times in, kept a consistent 1:43.8 as his general lap time they stuck with. But here comes, through the final corner, taking the win for round 5, the ERA Highway Patrol for the ERA Sunday Championship. Ben Hicks takes the win for the race and class win for the Diamond Division. Ernest Limburgs comes across ahead of his teammate. Will hold second position. Christoph Peterson takes the fastest lap of the race and finishes up third on the grid. Coming across the line now, first of our Platinums goes out to Scott Reynolds. He's going to be smiling ear to ear. What a stellar drive on his part. Jason Farmer will come across the line. Karl Heinz will finish up second place of our Platinum. Sean Skitter will be right behind him. And take a look, third place, Track Tool Team. David Borschke now comes into play and will be smiling, taking the final step on the podium for the Platinum Division. First of our gold division is going to be Christoph Rolotsky down in 15th position. He needs to try and keep the momentum. He sees Richard just ahead of him. He's got lots of clearance, but he will be taking the win for the gold division. Christoph Rolotsky, followed by Hanso Voss, and Jim Emilson rounds out our gold division in third place. What a stellar drive. What a run. Highs and lows, exciting times, and everyone having to think outside the box. It's worked out in the favor as we follow through with Christoph Rolotsky finishing up first of the gold division for the Los Pantos Hermanos team to go and break the streak, and it's worked out in his favor. What a stellar drive. Absolutely great stuff. As we head back to the commentary box. Man, oh man, what a drive. What excitement we had out on the circuit here today. And honestly, Watkins Glen bringing out all the drama. No real big crash. Well, there was the big crash at the start of the race, but during the course of it, after that fact, everyone took a far easier approach not to run into any issues, not wanting to cause any problems, not wanting to lose out any time as well. So that is always great to see from our competitors who had to really think how far are they willing to go during the course of this race. Let's quickly take a look at some of the highlights as we will be trying to get some interviews done here at ERA. And first interview is actually going to be the winner of the race, the ERA Highway Patrol himself, Ben Hicks, to come and have a chat to us. Ben, welcome to the commentary box. What a stellar drive. How was it out there at Watkins Glen on a very, very cold circuit?
Yeah, it was a good race. I was so happy to get pole. I feel like that's 2 points, really. It's only 1 point, but it's taking a point away from Chris as well. So, yeah, balanced out the fastest lap, which I didn't think I was getting anyway, based on strategy. And yeah, I think the pace difference really showed as where the cars are fast, because, I mean, the Lexus was rapid down the straight. They were never passing us. I feel like I've scammed both of them. Not super fair, but you know, through the corners, I was fighting the thing like crazy, and they're just going for a Sunday drive. So I guess it balances out. But yeah, it was a pretty crazy race.
Well, let's talk about the very unorthodox earlier pit stop. This is something that's rather new that you've been trying out. Was there any concern about how quickly you can climb back through the order, considering the cars ahead of you were also in their own fights?
Yeah, definitely. I think I knew my race was with Lindbergh's, because Chris had the 15-second penalty, so I was going to come out ahead of him anyway, and I didn't want to give Lindbergh's a massive overcut. I started on the old tyres, and I put too much, I put 65 litres in. I was just going to go long on the old tyres while I could, because I knew they weren't going to pass me. I was just going to sit in front, braking early, saving the tyres, and yeah, so as soon as he pitted, I just came in a couple laps later and controlled the race from there.
And how are you feeling with the championship before I let you go? Now stretching the lead in the championship a little bit more from the likes of Christoph Peterson. But what's the game plan heading into the next races?
Yeah, my game plan isn't very strategic. It's just go as fast as I can and see where I end up. I think we have a very strong car at Bathurst. But as Chris has shown in previous seasons, the last race, anything can happen. So, yeah, well, we'll see. I'll do my best.
Absolutely. And before I let you go, anything you want to say to all our partners here at ERA, to all the teams, the drivers, and most importantly, the virtual grandstand that comes cheering day in and day out every single time without fault, and seeing some of the epic racing here at ERA?
Yeah, thank you everyone. Thank you for watching. Thank you everyone for driving. We couldn't have a race without you. Thank you to you, Stephen, for this amazing broadcast you put on every week, and thank you to all the admins at ERA for letting us, for running this community for us. It's amazing. Thank you.
Absolutely wonderful stuff. Ben Hicks taking the victory here at Watkins Glen for round 5, and the victory for his class as well in the Diamond Division. Let's bring in our second place to come and have a chat to us. This is Ernest Lindbergh's after a stellar drive. The Fear the Bones driver. Ernest, welcome to the commentary box. What a race on your part, and a bit of a gamble in the pit stop to try and get ahead of Christoph Peterson. How are you feeling after that?
Yeah, I'm happy. I didn't die after the 2 disappointing results of Ricard and Monza. I'm back where I belong, in the podium positions. I'm very happy.
And how are you feeling with the championship, bringing you back into contention for 3rd place and for 2nd place after a really well done effort here at Watkins Glen?
I mean, I'm probably not a title contender anymore. I never was. I don't quite have that pace yet, but I'm just happy to come here every weekend and see what I can do against all the other fast people that we have.
And what was the hardest part of the race for you that you had to really just push yourself that little bit more? Because we saw multitude of dices happening out for, which would be essentially the back markers for you, but also quite a few drivers having some difficulty around the circuit with understeer when you were trying to go around the outside and they just were sweeping across your nose?
Biggest issues would probably be, yes, the back markers and the bus stop chicane, because previous experience tells me that the 488 doesn't really like the harsh curbs, so if I put a wheel wrong there, I'm flying into the barriers. So I had to really think about not placing the car in wrong positions and keeping it smooth through the bus stop chicane.
Absolutely great stuff. Well, before I let you go to enjoy the celebration, second of the diamonds and second overall, anyone you want to say thank you to here at ERA, to all our virtual spectators joining us in the grandstands, absolutely cheering you guys on and also rattling the bones as they do not fear.
Yeah, as I said, I want to thank all the our organizers that we have here, all the drivers, and of course you, Steven, for commentating every week. You're doing a really stellar job, and I'm happy that we have you here.
Absolutely wonderful stuff. Congratulations on getting the silver and fighting back in for the championship. Ernest Lindberghs of Fear the Bones going and moving into a great race nonetheless. Let's bring in third place of our diamonds, and then we will move on to our platinum. This is Christoph Peterson. Chris, welcome to the commentary box, and congratulations on getting the fastest lap to try and take some of the points away from Ben Hicks. How are you feeling after that?
Thank you. Yeah, that was my game plan, honestly. Like, I know I can't compete with the Lexus on the straight, so I thought, like, if he's gonna get front row, then I'm just gonna push for fastest lap. And originally, I also wanted to desperately take pole, but it was just about not enough. I was thinking about going out again when I saw that he was improving, but then I decided to not wear my tires down even more. And I think that was a good decision, because in the first stint on the worn tires, I had good pace.
Now, let's talk about the pit stop strategy, because you went incredibly long this time. Your teammate went a bit shorter. What was the discussion there? Was it just trying to figure out what's going to work? Did you feel that the car can go that little bit further? Because it was risky and unfortunately did drop you to third place.
Yeah, we didn't really communicate about the strategy beforehand, but I was just thinking, if I have the pace on the worn tires to put pressure on Ben, then I would just stay there and pull Ernest along with me, and if he would have gotten a little bit more pace in the first stint, then I would have let him through, so he can do the same. And in the end, I think it just worked out really well. Like, he came out in more or less free air. I came out just about in front of Jason, which was very, very good, especially for pushing for the fastest lap. So yeah, and I'm also, like, especially really, really happy for Skirt that he won, that he got pole and fastest lap after putting in a lot of practice this week. That's a really cool thing.
Well, it was an absolute battle. Before I let you go to enjoy the celebrations with the team, anyone you want to say thank you to or a shout out to here at ERA, to the admins, to all the stewards, and most importantly, the fans in the virtual grandstand going and cheering on here at the bowling of Watkins Glen.
Yeah, I think I want to specifically thank all the people like all the drivers I'm regularly interacting with in this league. That, like, you're giving me a lot of fun, a lot of nice social interactions here in this league, and this is what makes this league special. So let's carry on with that.
Absolutely wonderful stuff. Christoph Peterson taking third place here at Watkins Glen for round 5. A stellar drive on his part to go and fight it out. Got the fastest lap of the race and taking 1 point away from the championship leader. Let's bring in first place of our platinums and a stellar drive on his part, Skirt Reynolds, to come and have a chat to us. And after having a bit of a brawl with our diamond, Skirt, welcome to the commentary box. What a race on your part. Take us through the start, because it looked absolutely mental.
Yeah, so the start of the race was basically just managing. I started on my used tires that I used for quali, since we only have 2 tires to do our stints with. So I went ahead and started with the used tires, and the whole goal of my first stint was to take it easy the first couple laps and try to get the tires up to speed and warmed up and not shred them. and then just keep the car under me for the first part of the race, especially after qualifying pole. And then once I got onto my fresh tires in the second stint, it was all about just pushing and holding the high position. So I think we did that decently enough.
Now let's talk about having a fight with the Diamonds. We saw how close you were fighting the likes of Jason Farmer and various other competitors. Did you ever think of maybe coming off the gas partially to allow the Diamonds just to keep ahead of you, or were you just going for that overall finish?
For this race, for Watkins, it was all about the overall finish. So it was about pushing as hard as I could while still keeping safe and keeping a clean race. It was just trying to push the car as far as it would go. So didn't quite have top 3 pace. Maybe next time around at Watkins I will. But yeah, no, it was a overall fight. There was no classes out there today.
Well, it was absolutely great. How are you feeling with the championship now? Round 5 is done and dusted. We've got round 6 and round 7, and that would be it. And you're going and brawling for the gold championship.
I think for the rest of the championship, it's the same goal that I've had for all of the other races of just try to keep my pace up, try to keep the car clean and keep the car under me, and, you know, we'll finish where we finish. But today definitely calls for a cold beer and going to kick up my feet and watch the stream back.
Well, it was absolutely wonderful to have you and seeing all that. Anyone you want to give a shout out to out there in the virtual grandstands, and also to all the admins and stewards here at ERA, and along with all our partners?
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head there. I mean, I'd like to thank Fengler in specific, because he's the one that sets all this up, and he's the one that started this league or runs this league now. And then all the admins and the stewards that put in countless hours to keep everything running smoothly. And then all of the other drivers for showing up and giving us this competition that we can stream. And then thank you for the people that are watching in the grandstands, and Steven, to you for go ahead and commentating on all this. Hopefully we're providing some interesting racing to watch.
It's most certainly interesting, and with the points being so tight, I think it's going to be rather fun. And you've finally gone and snapped that, well, sharing points of 34 points between yourself and the likes of Simon Kursat. That's 34 points, and Simon didn't quite have the race working in his favor. That's going to move you a bit closer to the top 3, and Bathurst is next round. Well, absolutely well done to you, Scott Reynolds, and hope that you have all the momentum heading into Bathurst this coming weekend.
Thank you so much, Stephen.
Scott Reynolds giving us a bit of insight from his side. Absolutely wonderful to have a chat to our championship leaders and championship fighters. And congratulations to the race winners of Watkins Glen. Round 5 of the ERA Sunday Championship. And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it has been an exciting one. It has been a crazy one. And we are looking forward to heading over to Bathurst coming next weekend. It's going to be ups and downs. Who is going to be able to fight their way down the Conrad Straight? Who's got the momentum through the likes of Skyline? Or who is going to visit Hell's Corner? We're going to have to find out next weekend right here at ERA. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell notification icon. Let us know what was your favorite part of the race down in the comments. And if you want to join us here at ERA, go down to the link below. Join up with our Discord. We do have training days, which helps out. Whether you're new or whether you're a pro, a quick refresher can get you going to find out a little bit more, and you can share a bit of knowledge if you're out there with a pro division. Also, not to forget, we do have endurances that are happening out here at ERA. Head over to our SimGrid page and sign up there. Don't miss out all the action here at ERA, as we have got it all, from fun racing to teaching, from enduros to sprints. And we will see you back here next week, same time, for the ERA Sunday Championship. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you so much for joining us here at ERA and the THT Productions. My name is Stephen Koenig, and we'll see you next time right here at ERA for Bathurst. And like always, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, everybody.